old now. It's almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years, okay.
On the way down.
He's a city manager, so give him a nice welcome as well. And then our candidate, I know that most of you have met going in and out of here. And Eugene, I'm just going to ask you to give them just a few comments about yourself. And you have like 3 to 5 minutes. And then from there you will be subjected to all kinds of great questions.
Excited.
They have plenty of those to do.
All right.
And he is with Tucson Unified School District in Tucson, Arizona, with a very effective principal in a number of turnaround schools in another county near here, a small one, Dade, something like that. Eugene, let's welcome him as well, please.
Well, thank you very much for coming out this evening. I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here for our most precious resource, our children. This is an opportunity for me to not only engage you and respond to the questions that you're going to ask me, but to let you know a little bit about myself, what my expectations are, and hopefully how I can partner with you regardless to whether you're an internal stakeholder, an external stakeholder, or a parent. We have to work hand in hand. It's imperative that we understand that this work is interconnected. We can't work in isolation. We cannot work in silos. It is absolutely a team effort. So with that said, my name is Eugene Butler. Do not let the baby face fool you. I have been an educator for 24 years. This is my 25th year, believe it or not, time flies. As was indicated, I was an educator with Miami-Dade County Public Schools in various capacities for 20 years. Teacher. Taught language arts, journalism, creative writing, and it runs the gamut. I taught SARP back in the good old Students at Risk program, as well as honor students. So it's run the gamut in a sense of students that I've taught. Assistant principal of several schools, high school, middle school. I don't know if it's fortunate or not, but I've been fortunate enough to have gone to some schools that I think have made me not just a better administrator, but a better person, because I've been able to touch a lot of lives. I've been able to develop a lot of long-lasting relationships with former students and their parents, students that society might have given up on at one time or another. I worked in Broward County for 2 years, and then I transitioned to Tucson, Arizona. And you probably ask, how did I wind up in Tucson, Arizona from Miami? Apparently, I don't know how to read a map very well. My sons were in college in Texas, but they were in East Texas, and Texas is a big state. And on the map, Kingsville, Texas looked a heck of a lot closer to Tucson, Arizona than what it actually is. So I attempted to do my due diligence and my research, but I guess I didn't do a great job with that. But I was hired as the director for middle schools in Tucson, Arizona. Most of the middle schools in the district, when I was hired, were either very low C-rated or D-rated schools, and I was tasked and charged with turning the middle schools around. When the superintendent hired me, shared that the middle schools were the Achilles heel of the district, and how is it that I was going to turn these schools around in 2 years, because that was what I was given. In 2 years, under my leadership and working in concert with the principals, directors, teachers, 12 of the 14 middle schools improved their letter grade. One of the schools went from a B to an A, and the other schools all improved another letter grade. We did not have any more D-rated schools in the district after 2 years, and I transitioned to being asked to be the interim executive director for exceptional education. And in that capacity, because at one of my schools in Dade County, we had an exceptional ed center at my school, and we were able to address IEPs and get those back into compliance. And then most recently, I was hired as same district as the assistant superintendent for student services, where I have oversight for advanced learning experiences with AP, advanced placement, IB, AVID, honors classes, etc. I also have oversight for exceptional ed, the other side of that spectrum, when it comes to support, school choice, health services, school safety, open enrollment, just about you name it, it seems to fall under my purview. I have the largest department in the district in TUSD, and I'm really, really excited about the opportunity to come here and serve and work with the internal and external stakeholders here in St. Lucie County.
Thank you very much. Your first question of the evening would be, what organizational management techniques do you use to unify district departments and schools so that clear, consistent messages are conveyed to teachers despite the mandated state and federal requirements?
That's an excellent question. From the perspective of a leadership style, I look at myself as being a servant leader, collaborative leadership, but also as a transformative and transformational leader. You have to be a pragmatist in this position, which means you have to be fluid. You cannot pigeonhole yourself into one particular style, or students are going to slip through the cracks. It's doing what's right and what's research-based, but sometimes just doing what's right based upon the data, using, most of the time, 3 to 4 years of data to make decisions as far as outliers go. I also attended the University of Virginia turnaround model of a graduate of cohort 11 this past summer, and using case studies and articles, research-based articles, is also a focus that I think it's instrumental from an organizational position, not working in isolation, looking at best practices, what else is out there working, and then not having silos. So you don't have 1 or 2 schools doing one thing, another 2 or 3 schools doing something else. The efforts are universal. We're not working in silos, and I believe that all that starts with the superintendent's leadership team. It's incumbent upon the superintendent to make sure that those initiatives are implemented with fidelity and not have an opportunity for students and staffs to be able to work outside of that realm. I'm not saying that you can't have autonomy, but if we're going to move forward, we have to have a collective vision. There's equity in voice, but at the same time, we all have to be on the same page when it comes to making decisions. Once we decide a curriculum that we're going to go with, for example, it needs to be embedded, and we need to make sure that those best practices are the same from one school to the next school to ensure consistency.
What are the 4 elements of a successful school?
Well, narrowing down to 4 is a little difficult. I'll name a couple of the elements that Marzano suggests. I'll name a couple of the elements that Gene Butler suggests, and I'll take a look at. I'm a big fan of Stephen Covey, major fan of Stephen Covey and 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I'm also currently reading John Maxwell's 21 indispensable characteristics of good leaders. So there's a lot that goes into that, but I'll start with the Marzano piece. You have to have school environments that are safe and orderly. You have to make sure that you have environments that are conducive for learning and teaching for staff. We need to make sure that we have highly qualified teachers standing in front of our students to make sure that our students receive a world-class education that is second to none. It is also imperative that the lines of communication are open, not only between the school site and the school site and the parents, but from the parents and the school district. Quite often, we get caught up in, well, the schools will take care of it. The schools know better than anyone else. For the most part, nobody knows their kids like the teachers and the administrators. But I will share with you that when I was at one of the schools today, one of our non-instructional staff members asked me a question, and it was a very poignant question. She asked me, what is your perspective on non-instructional staff providing insight about instructional issues? That was a great question. I don't know if I gave her a great answer. I tried. I don't think my answer matched her question, but she asked a great question. Here was my attempt at trying to answer that question. I shared with her that every single person in the organization's opinion is valued, and we need to validate it. And since we're interconnected, her responses, her lens that she sees a particular issue or a problem might be a different perspective from what an instructional staff member might see. And her opinion and her voice is just as important as anyone else that's on the instructional side of the house. And what I mean by that is sometimes we really get caught up. And for a couple of you, I see a few familiar faces from one or two other sessions, but bear with me because there are some other folks that did not hear me say this earlier, and I think it's worth me revisiting. Sometimes we can get so caught up that the very simple answers are right in front of us. And what we bring to the table, our training, our background, and us analyzing and being analytical and looking at trend data, and the answer is right there in front of us. And here's the example that I shared about the situation in New York a few years back where a truck got stuck under an overpass. And they called the firefighters and everyone, and no one could figure out how in the world you get this truck from being stuck underneath. And firefighters are there, all emergency, etc., police officers, and a little kid walks up that's out there watching this. He said, why don't you just let the air out of the tires? Out of the mouth of babes. So everybody brings a perspective to the table. Sometimes we can overanalyze things to the point where it might be a very simple solution. And the mere fact that as a district, if you're going to be successful, you have to be interconnected. So non-instructional staff member sharing their perspective about an instructional issue or concern or just an initiative would be valued under this administration.
How would you work with government and community leaders on economic development?
One of the things I currently do and have done in other positions and would like to look forward to doing in this district as well is working collaboratively with the Chamber of Commerce, is getting out, and I speak and have spoken at the Kiwanis Club meeting maybe in December before the winter break. I was the keynote speaker at the Kiwanis Club. I was the keynote speaker for the State of Black Arizona STEM dinner. Just being involved and being engaged, and once again taking in as much as folks are willing to offer while I'm building those relationships and rapport. I think that the only way that we can make sure that this community is sustainable is to make sure that we're providing quality, educated students. We're not making widgets. We're making sure that the next generation of students that are competing in a global society are going to be successful. The world is getting smaller, and it's getting smaller every single day. As I indicated a little earlier in one of the sessions, in the past we would say to our students, our children here in St. Lucie, you're competing against kids from across town. Then we got to the point where we say you're competing against kids from northern Florida. You're competing against kids from the East Coast. You're competing against kids from the United States. Now, because the world is shrinking, our kids are competing against kids from Finland. They're competing against kids from Taiwan. They're competing against kids from South Korea. They're competing against kids from Singapore, China. These are countries that I listed that, especially on national or international tests like the TIMSS, they perform extremely well in science and mathematics. And one of the great things here is we already have a very strong strong foundation and a strong underpinning to build as far as a framework on, because we have an excellent STEM program here in St. Lucie. So just building on the STEM, and I don't know if I'm going to, one of the questions, so I'll say this anyway, and if I get asked it again, I'll be a little redundant, work with me. But in that STEM, I would like to add an A. So we focus on STEAM, the A for the arts. And I'm a major proponent for the arts, and I'll share some of that a little later.
What are the 2 to 3 opportunities you see for improvement, and what would you do?
I had the opportunity to, especially over the last 2 weeks, to start really going into a deep dive with the data. And a couple things that really stood out for me. One was the graduation rate. Here it's 73% in St. Lucie. The 4-year cohort graduation date, let me clarify that. 73%. For the state of Florida, it's 76%. And nationally, it's 80%. So there's a gap. And that's a gap that we have to close. Not only so we can put out good citizens that do great things and are wonderful humanitarians, et cetera, but back to, again, so our students can compete on a global level. I think that if we can address our graduation rates, and some of you might be saying, well, what about the dropout rate? All the research out there shows 4-year cohort data is much more reliable than dropout data. So the focus would be on graduation. One of the things that I was responsible for and charged with was getting students back into my former district. So this year in July, we went out in the community. It was a district-wide effort that was spearheaded by me and my department program. If you Google it, you'll find it. Steps to Success. We established an initiative where we went door to door. The students that had dropped out over the last 2 years, we went back and reclaimed those students. We had their names, their addresses, how many credits that they were short. I will be honest with you, Ted, this was the brainchild of the mayor in Tucson, as well as the superintendent, and then I got the charge to make it happen. But my team and I went out along with the mayor, the superintendent, president of the University of Arizona, president of Pima College, volunteers from the local community, nonprofits, United Way, et cetera, and went door to door. And we had a list of 425 students, and we were able to reclaim 171 of those kids back into school. And then in December, this past December, 16 of those youngsters actually graduated from high school. And we're waiting for the spring to see what those numbers are going to look like. So getting out in the community, develop relationships, partnerships with the local nonprofits, Chamber of Commerce. Those are the kind of initiatives that it's going to take for us to build rapport with everybody in the community, for us to be one. And once again, and I hate to keep saying it, but hopefully you'll hear me say this a lot in the future, that we are interconnected, and the chain is only as strong as its weakest link.
What is your philosophy on school turnaround?
I live it. Excellent question. I shared a little earlier, but I've been the principal of several turnaround schools. In Dade County, Miami-Dade County, for example, 2 of my schools outperformed the state on the writing portion of the FCAT, and these are perennially underachieving schools, and I was sent there as the turnaround principal. And in the first year, we outscored the state on the writing portion of the FCAT. In addition, at one school we improved 40 points on the FCAT in 1 year, and we were featured in Scholastic Administrator magazine for the turnaround that took place at that school, a middle school. And at one of the high schools, we improved 41 points in 1 year on the state assessment test. So not only do I strongly believe that turnarounds can take place, I have lived working with some dynamic folks that really understood that every single child can achieve, as long as we have high expectations for all of them. And it sounds a little cliche, but it is true. And I stand before you after having worked with some dynamic folks that bought into that type of belief, where we actually were able to turn around some schools that, quite frankly, other folks had kind of given up on. I think that pretty much answers that question.
What do you think of teachers' input in St. Lucie County, and how can we show them we value their work?
That's an excellent question. Not that they aren't all excellent questions. I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we provide needs assessments, surveys to get feedback actually from, and not just the teachers, from teachers and staff. Because we may be looking at the same problem again and thinking one thing, and teachers and staff might have a completely different belief about what we're saying, the direction we want to go in, what we're saying we're accomplishing. And then here's an example I'll give to you, and I shared this a little earlier. I'm a major proponent of looking at schools, district, organizations from a holistic standpoint, not just a snapshot of one state assessment test on one day. So don't get mad with me about what I'm about to say. Work with me. So if a school is an A school, an A-rated school, and 75% of their students are at proficiency in reading, they're an A school. That also means that 25% of the students are not at proficiency in reading. I think we need to start looking at data a little bit differently. And I'm going to be honest, I'll admit, I'm one of the first people that have done this over and over and over. Those state scores come in, we get our letter grade, and we run up, slap it on the marquee, let's go, we're B, we're C. I've never worked at an A school. My responsibility was always to turn schools around. I haven't quite gotten to the A. But I have moved schools that were extremely low performing. What about those other 25%? That's not the conversation we're comfortable with having. We just like, we're an A, everything's fine. And then for the principals, the teachers, the parents who send their kids to schools that are A, once you become an A, it's very difficult to maintain that A as well. Just as difficult as it was to achieve that status. What else is going in the school, though? What are the intangibles? When we're talking about what's happening inside of a school. Are kids winning awards and accolades? Teachers becoming nationally board certified? There's much more going on than that one snapshot of a letter grade of a test. I think we probably have to do a better job of educating the community. We probably have to do a better job of educating our parents to ask a question like, okay, your child's attending a school that received a C. Was there growth from the previous year to this year? Looking at 3 years of trend data, the previous 2 years, is the data on a positive trajectory? Or are we looking at one of these? Now, if we're looking at this, then we might have a problem. But I'm not ready to throw everybody out when we haven't looked at the data in detail and made informed decisions about what the data actually says. So just deep dives into the data, I think, will assist with when it comes to turnaround. What else is going on in the building? Nationally board certified teachers, students winning all kinds. I was at one of the schools today, which I learned a long time ago. Don't name a school unless you're ready to name every school in the district. So I visited a particular school today. And I was so incredibly impressed with all three of the schools. But one in particular was just very print rich. They had 3 student ambassadors that were just articulate, well-spoken, inviting kids, showing me where they had won oratory competitions, somebody else was a track runner, and that's what makes school. That is what school is about. Don't get me wrong, because I would not be standing before you sharing this information if student achievement was not priority number one. It is, and it will be. But at the same time, there has to be a happy balance between the student achievement and us also celebrating small successes throughout the school year and understanding that the arts are just as important. Understanding that project-based assignments give students opportunity to show critical thinking skills. Those things are just as important as little Gene taking AP Calc. Now, maybe some of the universities might disagree with me, but we're in the trenches and they're not. Just as important. So when it comes to turnaround and turnaround models, expectations for turnaround, I think you have to look at it from a big picture perspective and a holistic perspective.
What is your plan to help improve the lower performing schools in St. Lucie County?
Okay. I'm going to share something that we implemented at a few schools where I served as the principal. And then I know some of you have the question about, okay, how did they get 12 of their 14 middle schools to improve a letter grade in 2 years? This is one of the ways that we did this. And I think that we can implement the same type of approach and strategies here. Identifying the lowest 30 or lowest 35% based upon data, testing data, students at the school, and sending home letters to our parents stating that the students have been selected to participate in the Titan, for example, then the Husky, whatever your mascot might be, Saturday Academy, and having very structured and intentional practices on those Saturdays. Hour and a half of reading, hour and a half of math for the targeted students. It would be transitional as we're giving interim assessments and students are showing that they're actually mastering those particular skills. Then a student would be pulled out and another student would be put into the Saturday academies. But I won't say the names of programs because I don't want to advertise for any particular vendors, but there are tons and tons of outstanding intervention programs. Nothing beats Tier 1 instruction, but tons and tons of intervention programs out there that are research-based, that have been proven to assist with certain demographics, reading and mathematics, hour and a half of reading, hour and a half of math, and flip-flop. I would also recommend that we look at culturally relevant and culturally responsive pedagogy. Every student needs to understand that he or she has a legacy when they look at the history books, when they look at literature, and not feel that they were only victims or martyrs. If you've done any research on culturally responsive pedagogy or culturally responsive instruction, it's a great emphasis on making sure, especially in diverse communities like we have here, a great emphasis on making sure that approach is embedded in the regular curriculum. Another area where I think we could place an emphasis and a focus to ensure that students that have been underachieving are successful. Back to the data. I made it mandatory at every one of the middle schools when I was the director for middle schools that they all establish a data room at their school, and they track the data from interim assessment through the end of the school year on the students' progress. And we also use push-in and pull-out models for tutoring, for lack of a better term. So Title I funds used to bring back retired teachers, where they take a small cohort of students and work with those students in the classroom, not taking them somewhere else, But in the classroom, as soon as they're caught up and they're mastering that particular skill, they're back with their regular cohort. Those are some tried and proven best practice strategies when it comes to improving student achievement.
Now that the LAFS and MAFS have been released and implemented statewide, what vision do you have for the upcoming science standards rollout for St. Lucie County?
This goes back to partially with STEM, but also I'm going to share an anecdotal empirical experience here. In my former life, as principal at a particular high school, the juniors are tested in science. At least they were. I'm going to go on a limb here and be very honest and candid as I always am. I put every single junior in the school in science. I got, well, wait a minute, my child has already met the requirements for science for graduation. But if we're going to work together and we're going to make sure that we have students that are going to take a test, but they're not taking a science class, that doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. So we had a parent forum, parent night in reference to science to, one, explain what was expected. So we have to educate our parents. The same way we have to have professional development for the staffs to get them to understand what the expectations are. And I know this is a tough one with the science, what the expectations are. We have to actually do the same thing with our parents. Provide them with materials where they can actually work with the students at home. That component that I talked about with the reading and the math on Saturdays, we actually have to add science to that piece now. Another hour, perhaps. Before school, early bird, and after school, with the high school students going down and tutoring our elementary and middle school students. We have to take advantage of all of the human capital that we have. There's not enough time in the day for teachers to really roll this out, administrators to roll this out effectively. So PD and those PLCs will have to look very different. They'll have to be very intentional and very strategic, probably timed out and mapped out in the sense of 30 minutes for, 15 minutes for, 30 minutes for, another 15 minutes for, where it's very intentional in a sense with the time. But in the sense of the parents and the students rolling it out to them, it is going to take us implementing a train-the-trainer kind of model where the experts who are in our buildings, we don't have to go find anybody to be experts, will train, and then in the PLCs, we'll make sure that folks are working collaboratively by grade level, so you have parallel and vertical planning together, and that will prepare students for the next level as well.
What is the level of involvement with your community?
I guess that one kind of goes without saying. I've served in one capacity or another in various positions, principal, director, etc. But some of that's resulted in, back in 2010, 2011, I was selected as the Miami-Dade Council PTSA Principal of the Year in the fourth largest school district in the nation. Extremely involved at PTA meetings on Saturday. We held PTA meetings at Little League practice, football. If they don't come to me, then I go to them. That's the way it has to be done. Working with faith-based organizations. And this past winter break, we implemented something new in my district. I inquired, what do we do for some of our most needy families over the winter break? And it was shared with me in this new role that we don't do anything. And so what we did was collectively within my department, with the school safety department, especially in light of things that have been going around recently with law enforcement, I thought it would really have been nice for parents and community stakeholders to see the police officers with baskets going out to the homes and delivering food for the break. So we implement that. Just like I said, speaking to Kiwanis meetings, Chamber of Commerce, getting folks involved from the community, volunteers for the Steps to Success program. I'm in the process now, actually Monday and Tuesday night, Boys and Girls Club, which I know you guys already have established here, which is great. But we are just at the rudimentary level of building partnerships with the Boys and Girls Club in my district. So we just had Parents' Nights Monday and Tuesday, and we've identified a few pilot schools. But you guys are already ahead of the game. And so those are the kind of things that maybe not creating it, but fostering it and strengthening those kinds of relationships. I think that's at least a general idea of the kind of things that are in the community.
With all our budget cuts, how would you stay involved with our legislature?
A lot of times I know we feel like our hands are tied in the field of education, and there's only so much we can do. But, you know, a collective voice, getting parents together, getting district personnel together. There's only so much district personnel can say and do, but getting our parents and faith-based organizations, nonprofits, it doesn't hurt us to give them a script. Getting them to call their legislators, perhaps organizing bus trips where we'd go up to the Capitol and put a face with the cuts, because on a piece of paper, they just see numbers, bottom line. They don't see students. They don't see staff that's cut. They don't see programs that disappear that were instrumental in the academic success for children. They don't see materials and supplies that are drastically needed in schools where, unfortunately, and it's not unique to trust me, it's not unique to St. Lucie, where we're relying on PTAs to buy supplies and materials and things like that. Trust me, I see some heads nodding in agreement. Trust me, I know. But a collective voice can make a difference as long as we're advocating. The reason why most politicians don't take education very seriously is because children don't vote. And they go, well, it's the kids. Now, this other group, they've got all these lobbyists out there. We got to make sure, and I'll use my current district as a perfect example and then bring it back home. Arizona is in the exact same place, it's probably a little worse than Florida, and we have a newly elected governor and a newly elected commissioner of education who don't see eye to eye on anything, even though they ran on the same platform, which is interesting. But education, I'll have a job when I get back. I don't see education as being that's all you guys will take care of me here. I don't see education being at the forefront of the decision making. And when you say things like there's going to be already in the budget a 5% cut across the district, across the state for districts, but at the same time you put in an additional $4.8 million for correctional facilities, something's wrong with that picture. And that's kind of standard from state to state. I would rather educate children up front instead of worrying about sending them through the penal system down the line. So to answer your question in a nutshell, I think that collectively we need to make sure that we have advocates as well. We need to make sure that folks understand that those little numbers that they're looking at on pieces of paper are actually children, staff members, teachers, administrators, etc. And a constant bombardment. The same way the media does. The media does an unbelievable job with molding and shaping perception. Commercials do a wonderful job. Advertisers in selling products. Subliminal advertising. Big Mac, Big Mac, Big Mac. After a while, you're sitting there in front of the television, you go, man, I think I'd like a Big Mac. Well, you don't want a Big Mac. The advertiser's been telling you for the last 30 minutes you want a Big Mac. I think that if we start doing the same kinds of, we're not going anywhere. Children come first in this district. And you guys are going to get letters and emails and more letters and more emails. We're going to have buses that are going to come up to the Capitol. You're going to see St. Lucie. Oh, my God. Give these people what they want. I don't know how we're going to work it out, but we need to make some adjustments, some reallocations, some reapportionments somewhere along the line. Now, obviously, that would take some partnerships. That would take us working with other districts. That would take us working with private sector folks, because they need to understand, they say we want children to be college and career ready, whatever that's supposed to mean. If they're not providing us with the support, internships, externships, partnerships, dollars for incentives, it makes it very difficult for us to put out the kind of quality product, student, that they're looking for. So back to being interconnected. We're all interconnected. And I think that's probably the best approach that we could take.
What methods have you incorporated to increase teacher morale and retention?
From a school site principal's position, as well as its central office. I'll work backwards. Central office, one of the things that we do in my current district, I did in my former district, is to make sure that we recognize teachers, staff members for their accomplishments at the board meeting. So during the superintendent's report, for example, if we had 3 or 4 teachers that became nationally board certified, that would be my responsibility to make sure that I kept the public and the community and colleagues abreast of that. It's big to become nationally board certified. And for us to have folks that work that hard to earn that achievement, and then we don't recognize it. I say, well, why am I doing all of this work? I know I'm here for the students. I don't do it for the pat on the back, but I will tell you that even though teachers don't do it for the pat on the back, it doesn't hurt to recognize when they work really hard. Teachers and staff. The same thing goes with our students. We implemented an attendance initiative this year. And if you don't think that it's created a high level of competition, I mean, it's been absolutely amazing. I got charged this year with improving student attendance in my district. And so one of the initiatives that we put in place was we had these flags that were drafted. They're burgundy and silver, burgundy and white. All of them say the same thing except the level of the school. So TUSD, first place elementary school, first place attendance elementary school. TUSD, first place middle, K through 8 high school. Those flags fly proudly in the front of the 4 first place winners in the district after every single month. So we go back, we look at the data, we see who's in first place every month. Second and third place, they receive certificates. They're recognized at the board meeting. The first place winners are recognized at the board meeting also, but they receive these flags. So when you drive past the school, just like you see the United States flag, you see the state flag, you also see TUSD, first place winner, elementary school level. I have principals at principals meetings pulling me to the side. Mr. Brother, I was only 1/10 off. I understand, and we monitor the data very well. They've become incredibly competitive. We go out to the school and we present the flag to the school, where they bring in kids and teachers from the school, and they all take photos as well. I think it's all about respect. I think it's about recognizing folks' hard work, but that's incumbent upon us to be able to get that feedback from the schools in the sense of needs assessment. Again, I mentioned this earlier. What are some priorities that you feel, the staffs feel, parents feel will make a difference. I could stand up and talk from now until next Christmas, trust me, I truly could, about what we can do to boost morale. But coming in from the outside, nobody knows the district better than you. So I would think that probably asking for a needs assessment, asking teachers, asking parents, asking staff members, administrators, what are some of the things that you would like to see that you might think would boost the morale in your school? But recognition never hurts. It's up there with money and oxygen. It's incumbent upon us, though, to make those kinds of efforts. And lastly, before I transition to the next question, I think, and the research will bear this, it would help if we could do something financially. I will tell you right now, we don't have the market cornered on this again in St. Lucie, but I went to TUSD. I probably should have shared this at the very beginning, and I did not. Neither one of my parents have a high school diploma. I have 3 siblings, and neither one of my siblings have a high school diploma. So according to all the statistics, I'm not even supposed to be standing in front of you. I probably should be a street pharmacist somewhere. But I'm not supposed to be standing in front of you, not in front of this audience. That's what the statistics say. So, when I first went to TUSD, it was interesting to me that when I went and I visited schools and talked to folks about expectations, high expectations for all of our students, 2 things. One, this is a true story. I couldn't make this up if I wanted to. I visited a particular middle school, and I had a young lady that was with me from Title I, and we went in the classroom, and there was a group of little 6th graders, and they were scrambling around, and no, it's not, yes, it is. No, it's not, yes, it is. No, it's not, yes, it is. So I said, okay, can you find out what it's not, yes, it is, and go over to those little girls and find out what's going on. And she came back, and she said, Mr. Butler, I'm actually too embarrassed to say what they were talking about. I said, what were they talking about? She said, they think you're the president. I said, of what? The president. Well, we got some work to do. I know I'm just as charming and just as dashing. I carry a little extra stuff with me than I think the president does. We're not even the same complexion. We don't have the same features. But back to that culturally relevant piece as far as pedagogy and exposure, it was just the absolute funniest thing. I just had to share that. But that same day, I talked to my mom, and I hadn't been out there that long, about 2 weeks. And I told my mom I took a $10,000 pay cut to become the director for middle schools. And my mother said, let me get this right. I don't have these fancy degrees. You took a $10,000 pay cut to go from a principal to a director? And she made me feel like, hey, maybe I need to go back and reassess this kind of thing. So I want you to understand, we don't have the market here cornered on trying to find ways to properly compensate folks. Trust me, there's not a district that exists. If the funds were there, the teachers would have it overnight. We might have to revisit, some creative budgeting. I don't know. You have to get into it and sit down and look first before I stand here and make premature conversations and folks hold me accountable later if I'm fortunate enough to stand in front of you in the future. But I will tell you that it is not unique to this district, but I did hear from a couple of folks, and the mere fact that I mentioned it here and I watched some body language, I saw some heads shaking in agreement, that does seem to be something that we need to address, probably to assist with the morale issue.
Thank you very much for your responses. With our remaining time available, would you care to make a closing statement?
Sure. That's all? I thought we were going to be here for another 2 hours. You guys want to hang out with me, right? What I would like to say is, first of all, you could be doing so many other things, enjoying your family, being with your significant others, with your children, etc., and you took the time out of your busy schedule to be here tonight. and I do appreciate that. I also would like to say that given the opportunity to serve you and serve with you as the superintendent of schools, there are a lot of wonderful things already taking place in this district. Your superintendent is doing a great job. It's really, really strong foundation here. I think what we're looking at more of is just building on that framework of what's in place already and just trying to take it to the next level. But that doesn't happen without us working together. And back to the research. Research says that if you say something for a minimum of 3 times, people will remember it. So I think this is the 3rd time that we're interconnected, and we have to work collaboratively together in order to reach the student achievement, improving the graduation rates, all of those goals that I saw, the strategic plan, and I reviewed the superintendent's goals as well. I didn't see a lot about reading, and I think that's one of the areas we really are going to have to place a great emphasis, because everything else falls underneath that umbrella of reading. The writing component, the way the math is set up for the new standards, it's not the good old days. Not only you have to be able to read, you have to be a good critical thinker. So reading is extremely important, and I think that's a major component that we're going to have to address collectively, and hopefully we'll be able to find the resources to also take advantage of the social capital that all of our stakeholders bring to the table. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Eugene. You finally get to take a deep breath. Bob, thank you very much. And would you all who were here
Thank you, sir.
give us your yellow
I appreciate it. Nice meeting you.
Our superintendent search interviews for 2015, and we're going to welcome Mr. Eugene Butler to the table.
Thank you.
And just let you know that we are so glad and proud that you were selected as one of the top 5, and we look forward to your answers in your interview.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to open up with the first question, which is please take a few minutes and give us a thumbnail sketch of your professional experiences, your beliefs on the public education, and why you are interested in becoming St. Lucie County's Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you, Dr. Mills. I want to take this opportunity first to thank each and every one of you for giving me the opportunity to interview for this position. Quite often, when you're coming from the outside, all folks have is the documentation in front of them, and they haven't had the chance to see the body of work that you've done. So this is a wonderful opportunity that you took at face value, all the work that I have done and what I bring to the table. So thank you. Secondly, I'm an educator for 24 years. Don't let the baby face fool you. I am extremely excited about this opportunity of joining the family here at St. Lucie County. I've served in the capacity of a teacher, assistant principal, executive director in the Office of Professional Standards, director for middle schools, and assistant superintendent for student support services in various urban school districts. I was with Miami-Dade County Public Schools for 20 years, Broward County for 2, and I've successfully served as well in the Tucson Unified School District in Tucson, Arizona for 3 years. I'm currently, as I stated, the Assistant Superintendent for Student Services. In that capacity, I supervise and have oversight for the largest department in the district. So I have oversight for advanced learning experiences, i.e. Looking at your AP classes, IB, advanced honors classes, AVIT. The other extreme, exceptional education. I have oversight for the exceptional education department, school choice, health services, open enrollment, pretty much runs the gamut. I have the largest department in the district, as I indicated. That's basically it in a nutshell.
And if you would conclude that with why you're interested in becoming superintendent here for St. Lucie County.
I apologize. After thoroughly looking at the needs of the district and based upon the responsibilities and duties that you're looking for, I think it would be a happy marriage between what I bring to the table. I've increased graduation rates, student achievement, student performance, and those are all areas that I see a positive trajectory moving in the right direction here. I think that based upon my body of work, I would be able to assist and work collaboratively with the board, internal and external stakeholders in improving some of those areas. I know, for example, the graduation rate in St. Lucie County is 73.1%. For the state, it's 76.3%, I believe it is, and nationally it's 80%. So I have a history of improving graduation rates in other districts and at other schools. When it comes to student achievement, I've been fortunate enough in my capacity as a director for middle schools that 12 of the 14 schools that were assigned to me improved their letter grade within 2 years. And that takes into consideration the majority of those schools were C or D rated schools and parentally underachieving schools. So within 2 years to make those kinds of improvements, working in conjunction with the school sites and the parents, I think that I can bring some of those same skills here to St. Lucie. And as I've had a chance to take a look at the data, my area of expertise meets the needs of this district.
Very much. Thank you very much. The floor is now open to the board members for questions.
Speaking about achievement gap, with St. Lucie County, what would you do to close the achievement gap? Strategies involved?
That's an excellent question. I think the target area would probably have to be reading. As we look elementary, middle, and high school, our reading score is where we would probably want to put the greatest emphasis. So looking at things like Fluency Fridays at a couple of my schools as a principal, and then I also implemented this with Fidelity at the middle schools when I was the director for middle schools in TUSD. The social studies teachers partnered with the language arts or English teachers if they're high school or middle school, and they work collaboratively together to plan. So the social studies teachers on Fridays actually became reading teachers as well. And that goes in line with the Florida standards or Common Core standards in the sense of social studies teachers no longer standalone. They are reading teachers. So one of the initiatives that I think we could take a look at, and it's always a little premature to say what you will do before you even in an environment, because you have to talk collaboratively with the stakeholders to get feedback on best practices that are already working before we start throwing things out and saying this is not functional. So looking at an internal curriculum audit, not necessarily bringing anyone from the outside, but what best practices are actually working. Looking at 3 years of trend data. I'm a stickler for data. I don't make very many decisions without having data in front of me. So perhaps looking at 3 years of trend data, and that's been my experience in the past, and looking at trajectory. What's working, what's not working, looking at measurable gains. As far as reading goes, looking at the basal that's being used, looking at the iterations of our reading plan and seeing if we need to revisit our reading plan or best practices that we've implemented district-wide